It appears that Ukraine is back in the news again. And since the conversation is primarily political, I'm sure no one here has any opinions on the matter. And as some of you might know me, I haven't done a podcast in a while. But those of you who do know me might be wondering what I personally am thinking of in regards to the conversation that a lot of people are having across various social medias and what the national conversation is. And I would like to assure you that I am probably completely, distinctly unqualified for that conversation. It's been over a year since my last podcast, primarily because I kind of ran out of topics at the time. Got busy right around then, and I'm not a person who likes to have content for the sake of content, because it's not really about me. It's about things that I want to discuss. My name is Andrew Green. I am a minister at the Waukesha Church of Christ in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And prior to this, as I say, some people might think that I have a lot of input, and I probably do, but because I was a missionary in Ukraine for 11 years. And you say, well, that might kind of button hook you. Why would you feel unqualified to talk about this? I'm going to give a couple of different podcasts on the topic of on the discussion of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and all that, and kind of as it affects America here too with what people are talking about. Why wouldn't I have a good view of things? Why wouldn't I have maybe more accurate or more meaningful opinion than others who are less connected to it? And that's what I want to talk about today and kind of where we get. And it's largely because I am so close to it. A lot of times, the closer we are to it, I know people who are from there who've moved to the United States. I know people over there still. I'm in contact through the ministry that we still support, and I run a charity that still supports churches over there. And so as we do this, I want to remember that I'm keeping this spiritual. I'm not interested really in the politics of this. There's 1,000 Rachel Maddows and Tucker Carlsons, and if either of those are your preferred flavor, you're probably not going to like this because I'm not going to regurgitate their opinions. So I want to get to this discussion today. That is, and as I remember going back a couple of years, a friend of mine called me up. He's a preacher. He's in Louisiana, and their church supports Nikopol, Ukraine, where I was. And he called me up. He said, there's troops amassing on the border. He's like, are you concerned that this is going to lead to a war? And I assured him absolutely with greatest confidence that this in no way was going to become a conflict. I'm sure things were going to get sorted out. Less than 24 hours later, Russia had invaded. Now, I did a podcast earlier talking about cognitive dissonance, and the material from a lot of those podcasts might figure into some of these discussions, but I don't want to redo those podcasts. But why was I so confident? Especially seeing how I had all the information that was there. I lived over there. In fact, I moved over there in 2004, which was just months after or weeks after Russian agents had poisoned a candidate for president in Ukraine that they didn't like, Viktor Yushchenko. 4 years later, I was there when Russia invaded Georgia. And then I was still living over there in 2014 when they invaded Crimea in the Donbass region in the east of Ukraine. I had all the information. Why would this be such a shock to me? Why could I not accurately predict that hundreds of thousands of troops on the border was probably going to lead to an invasion of Ukraine again? It was because I was too close to it, because I didn't want to do that. It's called, it's just cognitive dissonance. What I wanted to be, what I was emotionally connected to, is what I rationalized, and I gave him all sorts of rationalizations for why, they weren't going to invade, and yet none of those things were accurate. Obviously, 24 hours later, Vladimir Putin proved me wrong. Just unless we have a sheer determination of will, our emotions are going to cloud our judgment. And that's what I want to talk about today, is our emotions. Emotions are involved. So you might know people that live there, and they might have accurate information that you couldn't possibly know just because our news is so disconnected. But that doesn't mean their analysis is correct or that their opinions are correct, because they represent a particular viewpoint. And we're going to talk about some of the specific emotions involved. So, when our emotions are involved, we analyze data very poorly. And we also advocate things very hastily. We make decisions quick. When we want something for whatever emotional, we become manipulatable. There's a guy by the name of Machiavelli in history. He was a Renaissance diplomat in Italy. And he wrote a book called The Prince, which was basically a political discourse. It was published after his death. His ideas weren't exactly original to him, but he, kind of modernized some ideas. But when you hear the phrase, Machiavellian, right? It's not a good phrase. It means like to be cruel and despotic. He was coincidentally, I'm sure it's just coincidence. I'm sure it's not related, but this cruel, despotic nature. He's considered the father of modern politics. I'm sure those two things aren't connected at all. Being despotic and being the father of modern politics. Those who's despotic, and how are politicians power hungry today? I don't think so. That's not. He borrowed an idea from Plato, however. Plato talked about the noble lie. And the noble lie is, among other things, to convince people to die for land, and or some other cause, as it gets branched out, to get people to give up their lives for some idea that we call patriotism, by the way. Right? It's a very strong emotion. You see, the noble lie was designed to manipulate people to secure massive amounts of wealth and land for elite people. Oh, that's a new thing, isn't it? No, actually, Samuel warned Israelites, the Hebrew people, that when they asked for a king, they were going to get just that. That's exactly what was going to happen, and it did. This has been going on for a long time. That kings and those want to manipulate and use those because they're not going to fight the war. So they want to manipulate common people to give up their lives for these goals that elite people have. This is the danger of patriotism, right? And recently, I've heard a lot about how a certain brand of patriotism is bad, but the same people, and it's the exact same people who are pushing that as a bad form of patriotism, are saying now that, and pushing an agenda, they're advocating. Remember, talk about advocating, what we advocate when our emotions are involved. Those same people are advocating Ukrainian patriotism. Some of you, and myself included, have voiced those same opinions. Right? We simultaneously talk about how bad American patriotism is, or at least a certain brand of it. Nationalism, as we call it, right? Nationalism. When you say nationalism, that's a buzzword. That's bad, and it leads to death. But Ukrainian nationalism, that's good. We should be for that. right? In the Ukrainian version, there is a definite cost of human life to it. So many of you have promoted Ukrainian patriotism and nationalism. You have changed your avatars to Ukrainian flags. I've done that. I flew a Ukrainian flag. I made a Ukrainian flag because I didn't want to get one from China. So I actually sewed my own on the day after Russia invaded. I'm not going to be, hypocritical here. I've had to sit back and reevaluate where I am on things. Right? We sit there, and I watch people on Facebook sitting there talking about I stand with Ukraine and posting that from their lazy boys. If you want to stand with Ukraine, buy a ticket. Go over there and join their military. And stand with them, actually, and then soon you'll be laying down with them. I'm a Christian. I wouldn't do that. Then why would you advocate that they do it? What you won't participate in. We have to be consistent. I want to look at a post that I posted very early in this whole thing, right? Here, I'm going to just bring this up here. Okay, here we go. It says, Andrew Green posts September 14th, 2022. France and Spain and the Netherlands spend taxpayer money to fight proxy war against England, a headline that no American has ever complained about. I commented on somebody's post later, a different post somewhere that was, I said when all of this stuff started, this is after we started hearing things about why are we spending taxpayer money on Ukraine, and I was like, wait a minute. I said, Ronald Reagan spent trillions of dollars for 10 years on Afghanistan to fight a proxy war against the Soviet Union. At the end of it, the entire Soviet Union collapsed. Ronald Reagan. Patriotism. We're really promoting, right? It's promotion of the same thing that we complain about. Paying for other people to die for land. That's what we're promoting. Right? And I don't want to dismiss the atrocities that are happening, and I want to make it sound like that's fine or whatever. Two things can actually be true. It can be wrong to promote patriotism, and we can be upset at senseless death. But to advocate for more senseless death is just throwing good money after bad. And I'm not talking about the dollars and cents. I'm talking about the value of human life. We finally have somebody who's talking about peace. And people are getting upset because they don't like the tone. Or because, well, this person should have been at the table to talk about it. Or whatever the thing is. And I don't want to get into those arguments because they're political. The bottom line is that someone's talking about peace. And we're getting ticked off because we don't like the way the discussions are going. Because we don't like the arrangement that it looks like. And it's stupid because these are negotiations. Negotiations are negotiations. You start here, this person starts here, and we end up here. That's how negotiations are. If you don't understand that, please don't ever go to Turkey. Let me tell you what. I wanted so bad to buy a $10,000 carpet. That's how negotiations go. They start over here, you start over there. I'm a bad negotiator. I'll just, think that's what it's worth. I'll start and pay you what you started at. It's like, that's not how it goes. But that's political. Someone's talking about peace. And we're getting sidetracked by questionable data that we don't like. We're getting upset about the optics of negotiations. It doesn't feel fair to me. We're going to look and explore some of those topics in future episodes. I don't have time to go into all of those. And some of those are very valid points on both sides of that political viewpoint. So I'm not going to get into them. But here's what I don't understand. I don't understand people, and I don't understand Christians particularly, who are upset about peace talks. I don't get you. People who want us to continue funding a war. If this is you, you've lost the plot. Let me explain that phrase. It's a British phrase. It's gone through variations and of what it means as an idiom. It now means just you're crazy, but originally it was a literature term, and it meant to get distracted by side characters in a story. You're writing a story, and you overdevelop it so far that you kind of lose what the story's about. There's this plot, and there's this mini plot, and that thing, and this character, and you forget the main characters and what's trying to be accomplished in your play. And I believe that many Christians have done this, maybe with good intentions, maybe because we're emotionally connected, and I understand that. Again, more than most. I lived there. I'm watching places that I walked past being bombed out. I understand that. You see the pictures. You hear the stories. It's awful. If you can't be moved, then you have no heart, really. Literally, you have no heart. And we want things to be right. It is this sense of justice that we have, another strong emotion, patriotism, justice. Right? I want to circle back to that because it's a long topic. We'll come back to that later in a different podcast. How valuable is this land? How valuable is land? How many lives? If we just open up a bank account and say, here you go, Ukraine, keep paying for it all. We'll fund it. How many lives is that land worth? If we ever got it back, how many lives would it be worth? Put a number on it. At what cost of human life do you regain that land? Go back and look at maps. Here, in fact, why don't we do that? Why don't we look at some maps? I have a couple here. And I'll just kind of flip these maps up here and let you, go back and look at other maps. Just the 1900s. Here's one, right? Okay, here's another one. Do you notice that borders change? Here's a map of Ukraine from 1900. I just kind of ran across. What? They've lost land. They used to have way down around the Black Sea on the other side. Those are like Azerbaijan and places like that. Now, do we have to fight Azerbaijan to get that land back? How far back do we go to get land back? Borders change. Good night. I'm Prussian. My country doesn't even exist. Do we get the old Prussians back and fight Germany and Kaliningrad and all those to get their land back? How far back do we go for land? What is the value of human life for land? Czechoslovakia is now Czech Republic. Slovakia, Yugoslavia. Where's Yugoslavia? Right? Those are recent. I mean, it's in my life that you used to be able to buy a Yugo. They don't make them. There's no country. Those who advocate for anything other than peace have lost the plot. I'm talking about people who claim to be Christians. If you're running across this and you're not a Christian, then I hope this piques your interest and you think about things from a different perspective than just the normal political stuff. Right? This is not stuff that I'm not a Tucker Carlson person or whatever your political flavor is. I'm not that. I'm interested in one thing. I'm interested in spiritual things. So when I say that you've lost the plot, that you are misguided, that you're off the beaten path, I don't say it lightly. God tells us what our concern is to be. This is not my opinion. I'm going to give you some quotes. Certainly, we would never do anything without God's direction. We would never deflect. We would never say, yeah, the Bible says this, but we would never do that. Well, let me put that to the test. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 to 12. He says, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers, the darkness, or against darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in the high places. He's talking about demonic powers that kind of manipulate things. He says, our fight is not with the people on this planet. Ours is not to be interested in physical fighting. That's not what a Christian is to be advocating. To be advocating why any money, tax, or the otherwise. Listen, a country is a country, and they have their rights. And God says, listen, they bear the sword not in vain. A country has a right to fight for itself. It is not the Christian's duty to advocate for things that cause death. If you do, you are in violation of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 and 12. That's not our fight. We are not citizens of this world, spiritually. Would God have you advocate for death and destruction? Keep it spiritual is what he says. I'm not praying for military success. I'm not praying for Ukraine to own the Donbass or not own the Donbass. I don't care. I'm praying for these people to get back to life. Fortunately, God tells us what to pray for. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1 and 2, he says this. He says, first of all, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings, for all who are in high positions, so that. What's the so that? What's the prayers for that God asks? So that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. For peace for a purpose, spirituality. That's what God is interested in. He's not concerned about where your borders are. He's not concerned about... God will take care of the justice part of things. That's not your job. It's way above your pay grade. Your job is to be concerned and to pray for peace. Exercising of our faith and the ability to do so peaceably is God's concern. That's what God asks us to be concerned about. And this outcry for patriotic justice is a devilish scheme that sidetracks us. And God says specifically to be warned about, to not get off into. I want you to think about this. As I said, I was a minister and a missionary in Nikopol, Ukraine. A lot of you, maybe I don't know how many of you, have been supporters of that, have given money that's gone towards preachers, have given money that's gone towards building church buildings and registering and doing all sorts of different things, camps that they go to and Sunday schools and all sorts of different stuff. The next bomb, because that is the front lines, the next bomb could be the church in Nikopol on a Sunday morning. Think about what you're advocating. How would you feel if the war ended one day after that event? Would you feel glad that you had promoted just a little bit more fighting? I need you to rediscover your plot. My name is Andrew Green. This is The Idea Collision, and I hope you join me next time.